Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. As most of you know, this channel is going to be about my year abroad in Slovenia with the Fulbright program, but I kind of wanted to take a moment and do an intro video as to what exactly Fulbright is and how I got to this point of being able to go live in Slovenia for a year for basically free. So to start with, explaining what the Fulbright program is, it's basically a program that's funded by the US Department of State, where they send students and professors abroad to different countries to either do English teaching or research. And so I have a background in neuroscience, that's what my undergraduate degree was in, and so I chose to do research for my Fulbright since my future career plan is to get a PhD in neuroscience, so it made the most sense for me. I know some people have done English teaching because there's more opportunities to get into a Fulbright with that versus some of the open research awards, but I decided to stick with the research. And then basically how I found out about Fulbright was my university has a Fulbright advisor. Most schools in the United States have one, and they sent an email to all of the graduating seniors who could possibly be interested and said, you know, this is the application deadline. Let me know if you're interested, and then we'll get you started in the application process. And so I did some background research on the Fulbright website, looked into what it was. It seemed really interesting. I love to travel, I love to do research, and so it's kind of a good combination of both for me. And then I looked at what the requirements would be and the chance I would have of winning one of the scholarships. And so I ended up deciding back in July of last year that Fulbright would be my second choice after an MD PhD, which was my original career choice. And that's what I had been prepping for last year. And so for Fulbright, I said, okay, since it's a backup plan, you know, if I do end up winning one, I don't have to accept it, but also since I do love traveling and I do love research, if I would get into an MD PhD, I can always just defer that. A lot of schools will end up doing that for students just because a Fulbright is a very prestigious grant, and so it looks really good on a resume. And so after I made that decision, I said, okay, let me find a country that I can apply to, because you're only allowed to apply to one. And since I don't speak any other languages besides English, I said, okay, let me look at just the ones that I am not required to speak their language, which limited me to Europe. And then from there, I went through all of the countries in Europe that didn't require their language to be spoken, made a list of how many applicants they typically have and how many grants they typically award for research, and then determined my odds of winning a grant based off of that. And so, you know, I could have applied to Ireland or the UK or Scotland, and I probably wouldn't have won because they get thousands of applications and they only give out a couple hundred grants a year. And so I ultimately decided on Slovenia because Slovenia typically doesn't have that many applicants. It's a lesser known country, and they only offer research awards, and they offer 2 a year. So since my odds were better with making an application for Slovenia, I then went on to Google Scholar, which is where you can look up PhDs who do research in fields that you're interested in and read their articles. And so I ended up finding a primary investigator through Google Scholar who did neuroscience research in Slovenia that was related to what I want to do with my PhD down the road. And she does a lot of techniques that I wanted to learn from. So I cold emailed her and I said, hey, my name is Elise, I'm from the United States, I'm currently a senior in college, and I'm applying for this program that would send me over to Slovenia to do research for a year. Would you be interested in being my mentor? Because I needed to have a an affiliation letter. So in your Fulbright application, there's a portion where you state if you have a host sponsor, and typically what most people do is they'll get a institution to write them that letter, and I decided to get my mentor to write that letter because it seemed more personal and made my application a bit better as to be accepted. And she was very enthusiastic and was like, of course you can come do research with me. And then from that point on, from about August to October last year, I worked with her and my Fulbright advisor in the United States to work on my application and refining it. And then I submitted it in October. And because Fulbright is a long process, I didn't hear back about my semifinalist status until January. Typically, the odds of making semifinalists are about a 5% chance, I want to say. If you make it to semifinalist, there's a good shot that you'll make finalist. And so I was super excited. And then 4 months after that, in April, I found out that I had made finalist. And so I ended up deciding to defer my acceptance to a PhD program to instead take the Fulbright opportunity to go live in Slovenia for 9 months and do research with this mentor that I found. And so for how I got to that point, for how I was able to apply for it, I had known back in high school that I wanted to do research. It was a passion of mine, and since I had wanted to do an MD PhD, like I mentioned, typically you have to do a lot of research for that kind of program. And so I started off in 2 labs my freshman year. I ended up narrowing it down to just the 1 lab because I loved it a lot more, and I was able to start my own project in that lab. And so that lab I did over 300 hours of research with, and it helped me to get into another special program called an REU, which is a research experience for undergraduates that I won a spot to in my freshman to sophomore year. And basically I got paid to do research over the summer, which was a very interesting experience and really opened me up to knowing that I wanted to pursue research long term. And so with that background, applying for a Fulbright Research Award was really easy because they're looking for somebody that has research experience and won't struggle with that aspect of the program while they're abroad. The other major aspect of a Fulbright is diplomacy and cultural ambassadry. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. And so having traveled a lot as a kid in high school, middle school, and even throughout college, I had that background as well to help with my more diplomacy-oriented side of Fulbright. And I love traveling, so I made sure to highlight how much like this experience would mean to me, and being able to live abroad as sort of a gap year and really learn from the people and learn from my mentor and stuff like that. And so that really helped out that side of my application. And then my academics was basically the rest of the applications. So between those 2 aspects of my application, I was basically fully rounded out. The only other portions that are part of the Fulbright application process is writing a personal statement, which is just describing, you know, who you are, why you want to apply for the Fulbright, stuff like that. And then I had to do a Fulbright interview. So there was a committee of professors at my university that gathered to interview me to write a committee letter, basically saying whether or not they thought I would be a good fit for the program. And then other than that, was pretty much it. Sent in my application, and 7 months later, I won the grant. And now I'm gonna be living overseas for 9 months, and I'm very excited. I leave in 2 weeks, so I'm very excited. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I just kind of basically covered a little bit about Fulbright. So if anybody has any questions about, you know, what Fulbright is, how I wrote my application, anything like that, just leave it in the comments and I might make a video going more in depth, especially if you wanted to know about like the Fulbright resources and stuff like that. So just let me know in the comment section, and then you can look forward to the next video being about how to pack for 9 months abroad with only 3 pieces of luggage.